I'm going to go through Sherlock Holmes lesson 6. So again, hopefully you've read through A Scandal in Bohemia. Perhaps you read it before today. It's Friday. Um, hopefully you've read it, and hopefully you've had a go at answering the questions before you look at this video. So this video is just meant to help you if you get stuck. Preferably you've tried the work yourself, and then I'm just going to go through my thoughts to see if I can help you out. Okay, so there's a task at the beginning of this lesson. Who have you met in this chapter in the Scandal of Bohemia? And you've got to write 2 interesting things about each character. Remember to try and use quotes to support text, quote from the text to support your ideas. Okay, so Sherlock Holmes then. This book is written in the first person from Watson's point of view. So we've got Watson's view on Sherlock. But what I picked out, remember, characters, it's what they look like, what they say, what they do. So he's described by Watson as buried among his old books. So he's obviously very learned because he reads a lot, and he has to read lots of very archaic, strange books because he's got such a wide skill set as a detective. And then you've got this weird comment, alternating between cocaine and ambition, weeks and weeks of cocaine and ambition. Sherlock Holmes, he is a flawed character. He has got his demons. He is a drug addict, but he's also one of the best detectives in the world at the time. And then you've got this other description of him pacing the room swiftly, eagerly, his head sunk on his chest. So when he's motivated, he's really moving. And then you've got this other quote that pinged out at me. When he meets Watson, he looked me over in his singular introspective fashion. So singular means no one else is like that. Introspective means looking inward. And Sherlock lives in his own world, really. He's not like a normal human being. So I think that shows you that no one's like him. He's singular and introspective. He's always thinking. He's always got a few things going on. So Dr. John Watson. Obviously, Watson can't describe himself, and the story's from himself, so we can only get an idea of what he's like from his thoughts. He tells the reader the thoughts, but also Sherlock gives us some clues. He says wedlock suits you. He says you've put on 7.5 pounds, and Watson's possibly a bit offended by this because he says more like 7 pounds, but he's pretty bang on, isn't he? So he's got married. He's obviously eating properly now because the wife's running the home better. And also you've got this Watson's reaction to Sherlock, basically deducing that his marriage has suited him and that he's sacked his servant girl because he sees some scratches on the shoe. And Watson is genuinely delighted by how simple the deduction is. It's almost like Sherlock always does a magic trick and then tells you what the results are. He says, "I'm baffled until you explain your process." So this shows that he's really looking up to Sherlock, but it also shows that Watson is kind of like the reader. We're on this ride with Watson, and we should be as delighted as he is when he reveals how he figures things out. Irene Adler. The fact that she's referred to as the woman shows that she's a very special woman. And then the rest of the descriptions of her are sort of quite sexist, really. The face of the most beautiful of women, the mind of the most resolute of men. So what a combination. In sort of modern terms, we'd call this sort of character a femme fatale, because she can use her feminine charms, but she's also got a very sharp mind about her. And femme fatales usually ensnare the protagonist into helping them, and they cause problems. And also it says she is the daintiest thing under a bonnet on this planet, and she turned all the men's heads in this parts. So she's clearly a very good-looking woman, but she's got the mind of the most resolute of men, don't forget. King of Bohemia, chest and limbs of Hercules. So Hercules, the mythical demigod, really strong. And then you've got this description of what he's wearing, which is slightly out of fashion. Fur-trimmed boots, flaming beryl brooch, which shows he's really rich. But I like this phrase, the impression of barbaric opulence. So barbaric, the Germans, they derived from the sort of barbarian Huns, didn't they, who defeated the Romans. So I think he's trying to refer back to that, really. And opulence means you're showing your wealth. Godfrey Norton, we don't get much about him. We get one description saying he's dark, handsome, and dashing, so like tall, dark, and handsome. You got another description of him, which is dark, aquiline, and moustached. And it's interesting having those ones together because those, believe it or not, those descriptions is exactly how Dracula is described by Bram Stoker. Aquiline means eagle-like, and Bram Stoker's Dracula has a moustache. Facial hair is very popular in Victorian times. Okay, so I think we've answered the next questions for Irene Adler. What do these opening sentences tell us both about Irene Adler and Sherlock Holmes? To Sherlock Holmes, she was always the woman. I have seldom heard him mention her by any other name. Okay, so what does it show about Sherlock? He knows women, but he puts this woman on a pedestal. She is the woman. And what does it say about Irene Adler? That she's something special. I think that's she's not like a typical Victorian woman. Okay, the next mini task. Look at the description given for the King of Bohemia. What does this description tell us about his character? I think I've already mentioned about the chest and limbs of Hercules, dress as rich but in bad taste, impression of barbaric opulence. He's wearing a sort of Zorro mask, but we can see his chin. And Conan Doyle does this sort of description on part of his character just by looking at the detail of his chin. This is kind of like called synecdoche, is the term for it. A long straight chin suggestive of resolution pushed to the length of obstinacy. So that he's not someone who's going to be pushed about because he's got a firm, strong superhero type chin. Okay. Sherlock Holmes. Why was the king surprised at Holmes? So there's a description, if you read in the Scandal of Bohemia, where he's looking down at Holmes, who's just sitting casually down in the armchair. And we find out later that he knows this is the king, but he's still acting really casually. You'd think, although Bohemia is like a small minor state in Czechoslovakia, you'd think he would act with more respect to royalty. But don't forget, we've just heard that he's solved a problem with the King of Holland right at the beginning of the story. But the king is surprised because he's described as a languid, lounging figure. Nice alliteration there. And yet his agents describe him as the most incisive reasoner and most energetic agent in Europe. So he can't see how's this guy going to be so clever. He looks like a lazy layabout. The next question. Why, out of all the evidence, a mere photograph could cause so much anguish? Anguish means pain. So a photograph couldn't have been faked back then, or it would have been quite... Well, actually, they did do fake fairies and stuff, didn't they? Fake ghost pictures. But it would be certainly scandalous. It could be printed. It's a hard copy. They've got it. And it's a scandal because he wants to marry the second daughter of the King of Scandinavia. So remember, he's only a minor royal, this King of Bohemia. So it's not the first daughter, the second daughter. But clearly Scandinavia is a lot bigger than Bohemia, so it would have been a good match for him. The narrator refers to the... Question 3. The narrator refers to the trained reasoner. Why do you think he refers to Sherlock in this way? I'd go back to the analogy that Sherlock gives right at the beginning to the steps. So when Watson is really delighted by the way that Sherlock can deduce things, he tells Watson, you see, but you do not observe. You see, but you do not observe. And then he sort of says, how many times have you seen those steps leading up to the upper landing? He says, loads of times. He says, how many steps are there? And he goes, oh, I don't know. But Sherlock does know. So that's what a trained reasoner is. Okay, the last task then. Select the character you feel interests you the most after reading the story. Be prepared to justify your choice. You may want to refer to Doyle's language choices, creation of suspense, what he reveals and what he chooses not to reveal about the characters. Okay, so when you're writing about characters, remember what they say, what they do or don't do, and how they act. Okay, and what the reader wants to reveal and not reveal. So I would choose either the King of Bohemia, Irene Adler, or Holmes. If you're choosing the King of Bohemia, make sure you get his description and his manner. The creation of suspense, make sure you get at the point when he reveals when he's the actual king. And also, what's quite interesting to him is his reaction at the end to the blackmail. He's actually still in love with Irene Adler, isn't he? And he sort of lets her off, and he sort of says, "Oh, what a woman." If you want to write about Irene Adler, I want you to write about how does Conan Doyle raise questions about her. So we don't really find out why she's blackmailing the King of Bohemia. We don't really know. There's some question about whether she loves Norton or not, or is she just using him as a useful contact as a lawyer. It does reveal later on in the letter that she leaves that she does love him. The fact that she uses the letter, the photograph as protection, and she's one of the few characters that manages to outwit Sherlock Holmes by recognizing his disguise, basically. So this idea that Irene Adler is obviously a very beautiful woman who's got all sorts of men from all different classes enthralled by her. King of Bohemia, Norton, and to some extent Sherlock Holmes are all enthralled by her, and yet she's outfoxed them all. Okay, or you could talk about Holmes. It's fun. Conan Doyle often starts his little stories with Holmes displaying his observational detective skills and then revealing how he does it, which is part of the fun, why he was so popular. So you might want to write about that. You might want to write about just how he's managed to get to where this letter is. He sets up a fake. First of all, he dresses up as a groom, which means like someone who works with the horses. He's a master disguise to sort of stake out this woman and find out her movements and what's going on. And he ends up being the witness to their actual marriage, because they need a person to sort of witness the marriage. How he disguises himself as a clergyman. He sets up a fake fight, so he's hired. He's got the skills to hire ruffians to sort of set up a fake fight, and he gets in there and he comes up with a plan to have the fake fire. Okay. But then also how he reacts to his plans being thwarted. So his whole plan was to start the fire, see where she's hidden it, but she hides. She knows that he's looking in that place, and instead of the photo being there, she hides a letter for him. So how does he react to that? But I think Irene Adler would be the most interesting character to write about in this final task. Okay, so I hope that was helpful. Give it your best shot and email me any results. Thank you.